I'm about to reveal the 5 common features of phonics lessons which can limit the progress that children make. So feature number 1 is focusing too much on grapheme recognition during the revisit and review part of the lesson. So why do people do this? Well, children need to practice recognising graphemes and they need lots of practice. But I've learnt that children then don't get enough practice of other things. So, for example, the writing of tricky words. So it's important that lessons start with a variety of things across a week. So consider reading graphemes, reading tricky words, writing tricky words, recap of best bets, for example. Those are all things that are important for children to revise. So it may be that you might even swap, and rather than having just one thing to focus on in revisit and review, you do 2 short things focusing on different aspects of phonics. So feature number 2 is that all the words in the practice part of the lesson contain that day's new grapheme. So why do people do this? Well, they're focused on the learning objective that day, and we all know that children need to practice what they've just been taught. But I've learnt that it's actually more beneficial to just put in 1 or 2 distractor words. So yes, the majority of words in the practice part of the lesson will contain today's grapheme, but if children know that all the words are going to contain a particular grapheme, then they don't have to think so hard. If we put in 1 or 2 distractor words, we can go back to something that we covered the previous day, or we can come back to something that our assessments are showing us we need to continue to practice. Feature number 3 is including 2 keywords with the new grapheme in the apply sentence. So why do people do this? Well, so children get more practice at using the new grapheme from that lesson. But I've learned that if you keep 1 keyword with the day's new grapheme, and then the other keyword in the sentence contains possibly yesterday's grapheme or something from the previous lesson that needs revision, then not only are you practicing today's new learning, but you're also including revision. Feature number 4 is asking children to think of words in phonics lessons. So why do people do this? Well, it may be that they've got no words on their planning, or it could be they believe that this gets children thinking. But I've learnt that this actually wastes lesson time. So the reason we teach phonics is to get children reading and spelling. But spending time in a lesson just thinking of a word doesn't actually impact on improving children's reading or spelling. What I've also learnt is that sometimes when you ask children to think of a word, they identify a word that doesn't quite match what you're teaching. So for example, if we were looking at the grapheme AI to represent the A sound in reception, and we say to the children, who can think of a word that's got A? What are you going to do if a child says day? Well, from their point of view, it does have an A sound, but you're then either having to say, well, that's not quite what we're focusing on today, or you have to then go into a lengthy explanation about what's different about that word, and you're wandering off the learning objective. I've also learned that it's actually too hard. If you ask children to think of a word, a lot of them can't do it. And actually, if you put an adult in a similar situation, the same is often the case. So if I say to you, can you think of a word that has the letters AR representing the OR sound? How quickly can you give me an answer to that question? It's actually quite hard to think of something. So it's difficult for children. And that's another reason why it's not a great idea. If you plan all the words yourself, your lessons are going to have a much better pace. you're going to be able to fit in more active blending and segmenting of words. And you can also build revision into revisit and review, practice and apply. And all these things will help you to accelerate progress. Feature number 5 is focusing too much on single syllable words. So why do people do this? That's what's on their lesson plan. Or these are the words that tend to spring to mind when we're planning. But I've learned that children find polysyllabic words more difficult to read and spell. So it's useful to have at least one in every phonics lesson so that children can become more confident in tackling them. So if you would like to use some ready-made phonics plans with all of these top tips built in, you can try some free samples on the links that accompany this post. So it's planning and accompanying resources.